Hello again, Year 5. How's it all going at home? It's an absolutely lovely day today. I hope you're out in the garden, doing some nice things, doing a bit of exercise today. I thought I'd share with you another little recipe I've been making. Today, I'm going to make pizzas. Pizza's one of my favourite foods. But I'm going to make it completely from scratch again. And hopefully some of you can do this at home. Hope you enjoyed my pie video. This is another kind of recipe that kind of takes all day. So it's a nice one to do when you're stuck at home a little bit and you've got plenty of time on your hands and you can come back to it. The first thing we're going to do is going to make our pizza dough. And it takes a while to be good at doing doughs and breads and things like that. But pizza dough is hopefully quite simple. So the first thing you're going to need is your flour. That's really important. You use strong bread flour. You can use plain flour, but it doesn't work quite so well. So you want to have strong bread flour, and you want a kilogram of strong bread flour. You could put half the amount in, but what I like to do is make more than enough, because when you end up with your balls of dough, you can freeze them and use them later, which is really useful. So I'm using a kilogram of strong bread flour. And what we're going to be doing is adding some water, some sugar, some salt and some yeast. And that's really important. There's a lot of chemistry going on here that we need to make sure we get right. So first things first, just to my flour, I'm going to add some salt. Now it's really important that you don't mix the salt and yeast directly together, because the salt, just pure salt on its own, can kill yeast and stop it working very well. So we want to try and avoid that. So I just stir that in, and what I'm going to do is make a little well in the middle. Okay. Some people like Jamie Oliver, you might see on TV, what they do is they put their flour on the table and they make a little well in the middle, and then you pour the water in there, and I tried that once and it went everywhere and made a massive mess. So I'm just going to do it in my bowl. It works just as well. But you need to make that nice well, so you're going to pour the water in. Now what I've got here is 650 millilitres of water. In fact, I've got a little bit too much. I'm going to pour a tiny bit away. And it's really important you measure these out quite accurately, because too much water, your dough is going to be too wet. It's not going to bind together well. That's exactly 650 now. Oh no, is it? I think I want a bit over still. I'm going to chuck a bit more away. And again, like with the pie, this water, it wants to be, there we go, that's 650. It wants to be warm. Not too cold, not too hot. It's warm. If you stick your finger in it, it should be the sort of same temperature as your finger. So it shouldn't feel cold, it shouldn't feel warm, it shouldn't feel hot. It should be just in the middle. So we've got our water. And what we're going to do is add our yeast. And this is really exciting, where the chemistry happens. So what we need is 14 grams of yeast. Now you can either buy little pouches. They come in 7-gram pouches. So if you think I need 14, how many packs do I need? 2 lots of, that's right, 7 gives you 14 grams. I've got a pot of yeast that lives in the fridge. Now I'm going to put in 4.
Hi Year 5! Mr. Ferguson has asked me to explain what yeast is and how it works. I reckon he must be baking bread or making something delicious in his kitchen. So here's a handy 1-minute guide explaining what yeast is and how on earth it works. Enjoy! Bye bye! Okay Year 5 scientists, are you ready to learn about the amazing science ingredient that Mr. Ferguson needs so badly for his baking masterpiece? He's ready in his kitchen, but is Mr. Yeast ready? That is the question. Let's learn a little bit more about him. He is a single-cell living organism. Think about that for a second. Your body has 100 trillion cells. This little fella only has a single cell. And yes! It's a fungus! Mr. Ferguson is putting a fungus into his cooking! Oh my goodness. Not much more to say about that. There are 1,500 different species of this particular fungus. Now, Mr. Ferguson only needs one of them. He needs something called active dry yeast, and it comes with an awfully fancy scientific name. Are you ready? It is Saccharomyces cerevisiae. That's Saccharomyces cerevisiae. And yes, you do need to teach it to mum, dad, brother, sister, dog, cat. Get them to say it. Test them on the spelling of it. That's your mission for today. Good luck. So, active dry yeast is either wonderfully awake or dreadfully sleepy. Now, Mr. Ferguson needs him to be incredibly awake for his baking. To wake him up, he needs to introduce him to 2 other ingredients: sugar and warm water. Now, if that happens, Mr. Active Dry Yeast gets awfully happy. He wakes up and yes, he multiplies. Babies upon babies upon more babies. And this is amazing for Mr. Ferguson's baking, because all that multiplication means that lots of that sugar gets eaten, and it's the yeast digesting the sugar that releases a gas that, yes, you've heard of lots of times this year already. It's called carbon dioxide, CO2, and it's the release of that gas that causes whatever Mr. Ferguson is baking to rise. Bread, for example, needs the yeast, otherwise it doesn't rise. However, if Mr. Ferguson mixes Mr. Active Dry Yeast with water that's too cold, well, he just won't bother waking up. He'll just remain asleep. Even worse though, if the water is too hot, Mr. Ferguson could kill the yeast, and that would be no good for his baking. So let's go over those key ideas quickly. That's how we spell yeast. Single cell living organism. Yes, it is a fungus. 1,500 different species. Mr. Ferguson needs just one. It's called Saccharomyces cerevisiae. He needs to wake it up. He needs to meet it with sugar and warm water, and he needs to keep it away from water that's too cold or too hot. Then they wake up. They multiply, and yes, they get eating, and they eat and eat and eat, and they eat the sugar. And while they're eating the sugar, they release all that carbon dioxide, which makes Mr. Ferguson's baking rise. Hope you enjoyed the explanation. See you soon, Year 5.
Stick that lives in the fridge. Now I'm going to put in 4 quite generous teaspoons, which is about 14 grams. In fact, it's pretty much spot on 14 grams. But you make sure it's plenty of yeast on there. Just pour that in. And what that does is what's called activate the yeast, so it can do its job. Yeast is an amazing chemical, and we'll see why in a minute. So you stir that in, and it makes a kind of weird brown. Doesn't smell very good at the moment. Doesn't smell quite good yet. Give it a good old mix in there. I'm going to try and get any lumps out if you can, and that should dissolve in. You also want to add approximately 2 teaspoons of sugar. That just sort of adds some flavour to the dough a little bit. Keep stirring your yeast, and that's going to activate the yeast in that warm water. Try and get any lumps out. What is a clever thing to do if you want is to measure it out and put the water on top of the yeast, whichever way around. Ooh, get a really pungent smell from that yeast, but that's because it's going to do some good things to my flour. So, move my yeast aside. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get this yeast that's kind of just been activating, and now all those lumpy bits are starting to dissolve away in the water. Keep stirring it. There we go. Woo, what a smell. Woo. Still smells more and more now. Okay, I think we're just about there. There's a couple of lumpy bits in there. Just get rid of those lumps. And what we're going to do is we're going to make our dough and we're going to leave it to proof, which is a process and it takes a while. And what's going to happen is it's going to really get bigger and bigger and expand, and you'll see it's an amazing process. So I'm going to pour in my water into the middle of my big well. It goes in there, all the water. And this is where you want to get a big old spoon, nice big spoon, just mix it all in. Don't use your hands yet, but you want to get all the water mixed in with all of the dough. This is a fun bit. Again, this is the part where you might say to your little younger brother or sister, do you want to come and mix all this up? All that water in with all that dough, all that flour. Just get it all mixed in there. Also, what the water, it's good to add the yeast into the water is because it spreads it out, so you get maximum yeast to flour ratio. So now you can start, I can start to feel it kind of toughen up now. The water's mixing with this dough. I'm going to get rid of some of that. And a little bit like with the pie, you might think you might need to add a little bit more water. So I might have to add some more water. See how I get on. So now I'm going to get in with my hands. Oh, I can feel that warm water. And I'm going to start mixing it up. It's going to be all sticky at the start, really sticky. So I'm going to just move it all around. Oh, can you see how sticky it starts to be? That's fine. Well, we want that to be sticky to start with. What we're going to do in a minute is knead it so it kind of loses all its stickiness. I want to get all the dry bits out because I want it to start sticking together. See, it's already starting to form a bit of a sort of not quite liquid, not quite solid dough. Right. Now what I'm going to do with my really sticky fingers, get some flour. Get rid of a bit of that stickiness. I've just got a bit of flour sitting over here, ready to go. So I dumped some flour on my table, spread it out a little bit. This makes a bit of a mess. Oh, and did I remind you at the beginning? No, I didn't. Make sure you've washed your hands and your surface is really nice and clean, because you're going to need to put it on the surface. So now I'm going to scrape off any last bits of dough off the inside of my bowl, and it's going to be really sticky at the start and it's going to feel a bit weird, but if you put the flour on that surface, you can start seeing it stick together. And what I'm going to do is just move my fingers in there, try and get all that sticky bits off my fingers, just start to prod and poke and push around. And you just got to trust your measurements, because it feels a bit weird, but actually we should be okay. It should be really sticky. Oh, and I start to knead it in. Oh, and what's happening here is we're developing the gluten in the dough, and you need to move that yeast around to make sure it activates it and doing its job properly. Oh, and it's really sticky still. We're going to have to knead this for about 10 minutes. Okay, 10 minutes of doing this. Try your best not to add too much flour. It will soak up the flour and actually it will start to get drier. It doesn't want to be moist. But if you can see now, my dough, it's not sticky anymore, is it? It's almost like a big round ball of dough. And I'm almost at the point now where the gluten started to develop and it's almost like elastic. So the reason that's now sticking, whereas before it was sticky, it's holding together, whereas before it was sticky, is because we've got all this gluten. Can you see how it kind of, if I pull it apart, it stays together a bit more? I still want to just give it a little bit more of a knead. So when you're kneading it, you just push your palm in the middle, move around. If you want someone who's better at this, maybe go and look at Paul Hollywood on YouTube or someone like that. Probably better than I am, but you've got to pour your might into it. Keep moving the dough, just keep moving it around. And you should start to see these kind of, where this, like that bit there is a good example of gluten forming. Can you see it? That's like a good bit of gluten developing. And that's what you want. That's when you have that lovely pizza dough. And it's like those crusts are all lovely and airy. It's because there's loads of gluten in it. If you're gluten free, I suggest maybe doing a different recipe. Okay. So I'm pretty happy with my dough now. It's one big ball, and like I normally do, with my pie, I did this with the pastry, I kind of clean up a little bit with it to get any bits of excess dough that's lying around on the table, just so it's less to wipe up later. And that, I'm happy with that now. Look at that. Now this doesn't look very impressive right now, but I'd say in about an hour and a half, it's going to get to about 2 or maybe 3 times the size of this, because the yeast does something very special inside. It starts to create little lovely pockets of air, which expands it out. It's going to be amazing. I can't wait. So what I've got now is my bowl. This is the same bowl I used earlier, but I've washed it up now. So I've washed it and made sure it's super dry on the inside. And what you're going to need is a nice old glug of olive oil around the sides. You see, like that. And then again, with your hand, just make sure it's all covered, all around the edge, up to the sides. And you might not think, oh, I don't need to put it up the sides. All the way around the inside of my bowl. Okay? And what that does is it stops this dough sticking to the side of your bowl later on. And I'll show you later when I take it out. So, don't worry about getting olive oil on your dough. It's fine. It's good for it. So I pop my dough in the middle there. You see it's all slippery and sliding around. Just pop it in there. And there you have it. All you need to do now is just leave it alone. I would put it probably somewhere fairly warm, not too cold, not too hot either. Just let it do its thing. And you're going to be amazed when you see this dough. Probably in about an hour. I'm going to keep checking it because sometimes yeast works differently. It depends on the weather, it depends on the heat, depends on lots of different things. So again, it's not exact, but I'm pretty sure that dough's going to do this. So all I'm going to do is get a tea towel just to protect it, keep anything away from it, any bugs going on there or whatever. And I'm just going to find a little corner of the kitchen, not somewhere in the sun. I'd take it out of the sunlight. Somewhere in the kitchen, I can just leave it for about an hour, maybe 2 hours. If you've got more time, 2 hours is probably a good time. Next, I'm going to make my tomato sauce. Right, now I'm going to crack on with my sauce. This is the part where you need to remember to ask your parents to help you. Make sure if you're using a knife, you're using the right techniques. If you've noticed, wash my hands, I've cleaned my surface, everything's clean. So, get your knife, chop the ends off your onion. And with this sauce, we want to make sure we chop everything really, really, really finely. And just going to get my knife, just nip down the side. Take that skin off. Peel my onion, last outside layer of my onion. I have already done a couple other bits first just to make sure I'm prepared. Just get the top of that bit. There we go. Right, get rid of all those bits. I'm going to get on with chopping my onion. Remember using your claw grip. Just going to cut along, but don't cut the whole way. If you cut, just leave the last little bit together. You can cut the other way nice and finely. So I'm going to get this end this way. Just chop. Again, you might want to just ask your adult to help you chop the onion up nice and fine. Go. Some nice finely chopped onion. Just going to get rid of these other little bits and bobs in the bin. Try not to cry at the onions. It's so sad. So just see, I'm just kind of chopping almost the whole way. And then chop it the way around. Keep your fingers away from your knife. Chop that onion up. Also, I'm going to chop some garlic. Again, I love garlic and stuff. I'm going to use about 5 or 6 cloves of garlic. Again, you just get your ends. And you might want to ask adult, or like I said before, just use one of those garlic crushers. Saves you a lot of time and your fingers smelling of garlic. Whew. Just move that to the side. And again, with garlic, you want to cut it really nice and fine, all the way to the end. And just really finely chop the garlic. There we go. Use that technique like that, just to get every little bit, get all the flavour as much as you can. Move that to the side of my onion. Now, this is my little secret ingredient. Celery. You might be thinking, how boring is that? Bit of celery, why would you put that on a pizza? I found something out literally yesterday about celery, is that it's got its own salt inside there. So it creates a really nice seasoning. So I'm going to cut it long ways first because I want to cut this really small. And when it cooks down, you'll barely even notice it. It'll just release all its flavour. So I actually got half a celery and I'm going to cut it really nice and thinly. Use my claw. Really thin. You can see how far away my fingers are from the end of the celery. Just chop it all up. And just that smell you get is that salt being released and the nice flavours. It's not really going to, you're not going to taste your pizza and go, oh, it tastes of celery. It will just taste of that salty flavour. Natural salts. If you don't have any celery, you might have some celery salt in the cupboard. Just use that. If you don't have celery, it's not the end of the world. I just like to add it. Again, I'm going to just chop it really finely. I've got another bit, I'm going to chop that in a minute. But the other ingredient, hot chilli. Depends how much you want to put in there. I think it's really important to put some chilli in there. But if you don't want it to be too spicy, get rid of the seeds. That's what makes chilies really spicy. So you chop the end off and just chop sort of down the middle. And see those little white bits there? Those are the spicy seeds. So I'm just going to flip those out with the end of my knife. Get them out well out of the way. Again, adults asked to help with this. And then you get your chilli, use a bridge, chop in half. And again, similar to your celery, just chop the ends like that. Claw grip. Really nice and fine. Chop all those so that's tiny bits of chilli. And then, number one rule when you chop chilli, don't touch your eyes or your mouth or your nose because it will burn. Stay away from your mouth. I'll use that technique as well. So you can see I'm just chopping everything down so it's nice and small. So I'm going to pause the video in a minute. I'm going to chop the rest of my celery. I'm going to chop about 4 or 5 more cloves of garlic. I'm going to chop my other half of my chilli. And I've also got a red onion as well. So I'm going to have all of this stuff. When it's all chopped up, it's going to just make the flavour of my sauce. Oh, love it. Right, the next part, we're going to make our sauce. So as you can see, I've chopped all my ingredients up nice and finely. Yeah, really make sure you ask an adult for this. And also, most people when they make pizzas, they just buy their own tomato sauce. That's fine, you can do that if you want. I like making my own from scratch. Again, with the dough, you could just buy your own as well. But this is a fun thing to do. It's a fun way to spend the day. Okay, so what you want to do is have your heat on about 3 or 4, fairly hot. And put the pan on the heat. Let that pan heat up. Shouldn't take very long. And you want to get your tomatoes. So I'm using 2 tins of chopped tomato. And some passata. This is like strained tomato, really thin. So now, the pan's heating up a bit, good. Now some olive oil, good glug of olive oil, look at that. Doesn't seem very healthy, but it's really important to get loads of oil in there to make a lovely thick rich sauce. So, my oil's in there, getting hot with my heat. Oh, I can smell the smell of that oil heating up already. Okay, and I found out something cool the other day. You know this bit of the chopping board there? Perfect, just to put your ingredients through. Make sure you have clean hands for this. You already smell here the you can already hear that, can't you? You use my knife from earlier to get the rest off. Again, ask an adult to help you because we're going to use a hot surface here. Ask an adult to make sure it's safe. Chopping board in the sink to wash up in a bit. And now, start giving it a twirl. Get all the oil coating all of those bits. Just, oh, I wish you could smell that smell of all those things cooking up. The celery is my favourite smell. Smell the salt coming out of it. Look at that. So at this point I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper. I like to season at the beginning, the middle and the end. That's my little trick. Make sure we get as much flavour as we can. Not too much salt and pepper though, you don't want to overpower it. So that shouldn't take very long to cook up at all. You want to get it just so it's like browning and it starts to release some liquid, some juice, because that's going to create the flavour for my sauce. If I put my tomatoes in too early and my onions are too hard, we're just going to get bits of raw onion in the sauce. And this is just going to all reduce and cook down. We're not really going to get many big bits of onion in the sauce on the top of your pizza if you're thinking, oh, my pizza's going to be covered in onions. It's not. So I'm going to leave that to cook for about 5-10 minutes. Right, so this has actually been cooking for about 15 minutes. It's really, I want to take my time, make sure it's all nicely cooked and everything's soft, all the onions are soft, the chili's soft, and the celery's almost disappeared, just sort of dissolves away. It leaves that lovely salty flavour. So look, that's what it should kind of look like now. Just a big old mess of onion and things. And that's going to create the flavour of my sauce. So, get my tomatoes, put them in. You hear it sizzling. Ooh, another tin. Lovely, lovely, lovely. And then my passata, be careful, is a bit, and this is really thin sauce, can you see? Oh, and that's basically tomato that's been pushed through a sieve. What I want to do is just get a little bit of water, just to get all the extra bits out of my, don't want to waste anything. Pop that in there. I don't think, oh, it's going to be all watery because we're going to leave this for quite a while just to cook down. Yeah, fill that tin up with just some water. Get the last bits in there. Don't want to waste anything. Love a little bit of water in that other tin there. I give it a nice little stir. And it shouldn't really look very nice at the moment. It looks a little bit, it's a bit wet and just like sort of tomatoey, but what's going to happen is it's going to cook down, it's going to get all thick and oh, lovely. Another tiny bit of salt just to season it, a little bit of pepper, and I'm going to chuck in some dried herbs. I'm going to put in a little bit of dried thyme, but if you've got anything, you've got mixed herbs, you've got basil, dried basil, that'd be great. Any herb de Provence, like that as well. And I'm actually going to have, I've got some fresh basil, but I'm going to put that in right at the end so it just mixes in and almost have whole bits of basil in there. So give it a last final stir, get all those herbs in there. There we go. Right, whoop. In the sink. And then you can see my nice tomato sauce there. And I've left my heat, I'm going to turn it down. Just put on 2 out of 6. Put it on nice and low, and you're going to need a lid because with that passata it's going to start spitting and making a mess. So I'm just leaving that now for about probably 20 minutes, half an hour. I might come back and give it a bit of a stir in a bit, but just leave it, let it thicken up. Lovely. Right, year 5. I have actually been cooking this sauce now for about 45 minutes. I've left it for ages and ages, and it's really nice and thick now. I did actually forget to tell you an ingredient I added. I added some tomato puree just to thicken it up a little bit. But also what's very exciting, and this has been, I've left it actually for about 2 hours. You can leave it for a bit longer, but about 2 hours is perfect. Remember what it was like before in that little bowl? Filled up about half the bowl. Well, now, look at this. Look! It's massive! It's huge! Big wobbly bit of dough. And what we're going to do now is something called knocking back the dough. And this dough is now full of air. And as soon as I put my finger in it, it's going to go, because it's going to release all the air out. But it still means that it's proved and all the yeast has made these air pockets to make our dough nice and light. So watch what happens now. I just push it back in. See what happens now? It kind of shrinks a little bit. And what I'm going to do now is get this dough, and I'm going to get individual little pizza doughs. And what I'm going to do is wrap it in some cling film, and then I'm going to let it prove again. So it's going to get bigger again. So I don't want to make them too big. But what I'm going to start with is get this big dough. I'm going to divide it up. I'm going to show you how to make one, and then you can make the rest. So take my dough out, and I put it on the table. And luckily it's got the olive oil in there, so it's not going to stick. It's going to be nice and good. There we go. It's not going to stick. It's got all that olive oil on the bottom. And I made sure I clean my surface before I go. So what I want to do is I want to kind of, don't want to mess around with it too much, but I want to find something where I can sort of just divide it up. And I think I'm going to make about 6 pizza doughs with this. So I'm going to find something that's perfect, something nice and hard and thin, where I could just divide my dough up. There we go. So I think I might make 8 actually. Just a bit of fractions. Split them in half. Might use that whole thing like that. There we go. There we go. Split them into quarters. And I don't want to do too much, I just want to divide it up. I don't want to mess around with it too much. I'm not going to start kneading it again. I don't want to take out too much of the air pockets. And then I'm going to make them into 8s. So I'm going to divide my big thing of dough up into kind of 8s. There's another one. And this, what this oil's doing is helping it stop to stick to the surfaces. So can you see now? I've got one of my pizza doughs, and it's still quite small, but what's going to happen when I wrap this up is it's going to expand again, and it's going to create my nice pizza dough. So that, you can see what I'm doing now. I'm tucking it underneath, tucking the dough under until it makes a nice ball. See that? That's perfect. Okay, I'm going to get my cling film. My finger's a bit oily, you might want to ask someone else to help you with this. There we go. Taking it out of the box this time so I don't struggle as much. Get my cling film out and just, oh maybe I'll do it the other way around. pop my dough in the middle and wrap it up. Make sure it's nicely wrapped up. Hopefully that olive oil in there is going to make sure it doesn't stick. What I normally do is use something called semolina, which helps it not stick to the sides, but I don't have any of that today, so I won't bother. And now that might look small at the moment, but that is going to double in size probably again. Okay, so at this point you could put it in the fridge, or you could leave it on the side. If you cool it down, it will slow down the process. So I'm going to leave a few of these on the side because I'm having these later today, but you could put some in the fridge or you could put some in the freezer. And you want to repeat that with the rest of your doughs. I'm not going to show you that, it's probably a little bit boring for you. The next time is going to be in about 5 or 6 hours when I'm actually ready to make my pizzas, and then we're ready to go. Right, so I've left my dough in those cling film for a while, and look what's happened. It's expanded. Can you see in there all those little air bubbles? So that second proof's made the dough go out even more. I'm going to use this with this one. I'm going to show you how to make one of the pizzas, but then with the other doughs you can do whatever you like with them. I've got a couple in the fridge as well. I'm going to save them for later, and they haven't expanded quite as much. So what you're going to want to do, unwrap your dough out of your cling film. Hopefully it shouldn't stick too much because you have that olive oil on it from earlier. Alright, good. And before you put it on the table, what you're going to need, which I found now, is this semolina or ground rice. Really good because it stops it sticking. You can use olive oil as well, but I'm going to use the semolina. Just give it a nice sprinkle. Again, make sure you've washed those surfaces and you've washed your hands. I've literally just been to wash my hands. I'm going to take my dough. I'm going to be really careful with it now. It's still a little bit sticky. And I'm going to put that dough on the table, get a bit of my semolina on that. So now that semolina is there, it just stops it sticking so much. Can you see how it's really kind of elastic, and it just smells great. You can almost smell, it's like an alcohol kind of smell because of the fermentation of the yeast. Not to say that the dough's alcoholic, but it just has this amazing smell to it. And what you want to do is just try and spread it out, and it's not going to be look like a pizza you might have in a restaurant. It's going to be a little bit of a different funny shape depending on how it's proved. It's homemade pizza. This one's going to be fairly small. What I did is I did one big one earlier, so I'm going to have this massive big one later as well. Yeah, but look, this one's actually more of a square shape, isn't it? Doesn't matter. And I just want to stretch out the edges. Get rid of that out of the way. Stretch out the edges and just make it. It's not going to be a huge pizza. Maybe try and make it as circular as I can. You can let gravity help you do the work. Some people, if they're confident, fling it around like the Italians do. I'm not very good at that. I'm just going to do it gently. Maybe if I practice a bit more I can get a bit better at that. Right, so now something that resembles a pizza. Now this is the really fun, exciting part. So I'm going to get a nice dish like this. This is a proper pizza dish to go in the oven. It's got these nice holes in it, which lets the air get underneath, creates a nice crispy bottom. And it's really important you put your pizza dough on your dish before you put the toppings on, because you might start putting your tomato, your cheese, and then you're going to have to pick it up, put it on the dish, which is not good. So I'm going to pop that there. It's a nice thin one. There's a couple of little holes that have come. I'm just going to tidy them up a bit. Now earlier I showed you how to make that lovely pizza sauce. Some of you might and probably have just bought some, a lot easier. But now I've got my pizza sauce still in the dish. I've just left it to cool, and it's really thick. It's really lovely and thick, and all those sort of veg I cooked earlier is almost gone. It's just dissolved into the sauce. There's a little bit of lumpy bits, but that's nice. It's really nice and thick. I'm going to get my spoon, probably use about 3 tablespoons, and just spread it over the pizza. Oh, I might do another one, just so it's all covered. And then you're just going to leave the kind of edges free for the crust to form. You don't want to spill it over the edge. Got one more little one. One more little bit of tomato sauce. I've done that, and now up to you to add any kind of topping you want. This is the fun part. This is definitely where you might say, Mum, Dad, brother, sister, what do you fancy on your pizza? And this is why this recipe at the moment is great, because you can use whatever you've got lying around, stuff that's going off. I'm not going to put it on this pizza, but last night we had chicken fajitas. I'm going to make another pizza and just have leftover chicken fajitas on there. Bit strange, but at least it uses up the leftovers. So this pizza, I'm going to have some red onion. I'm going to use some chorizo from Spain, Spanish sliced chorizo, some grated mozzarella, and some actual sliced mozzarella as well. Oh, it's going to be good. I'm going to go first with my cheese. Don't use too much, you don't want to overwhelm it. Just a little nice layer of cheese, just enough to cover. You don't want it to be too over the top. Unless you're just doing like a 4 cheese pizza, in which case I would go to town on your cheese. I'm going to get maybe, well, I'll see how many slices fit on there. 3, 4, 5 slices of chorizo. Chorizo's the best, I love chorizo. Or chorizo. And then I'm going to just put my lovely mozzarella in there. Oh, there's a little bit there, it's not going to fit. And then I'm just going to put, not too much, I don't like too much on mine, but just a little bit of red onion, just more for a bit of colour. I love the colour of red onions. Look, they're more purple. I don't know why they call them red onions when they're actually purple onions. Who decided to call them red onions? Anyway, that's for another time. One more little bit. And then the final little touch, if you've got some, you might not have any, but just to make it fully Italian and a lovely little bit of extra flavour and a bit of colour, you're going to get some lovely fresh basil. Oh, it smells so delicious. Peppery, smoky, and you just want to sort of just sprinkle it down and spread it out a little bit. Oh, and that fresh basil is going to be absolutely delicious. And then just a tiny, put your thumb over the top there, just a little tiny splash of drizzle of olive oil. I know this isn't necessarily the healthiest meal I could be making, but like I said earlier, it's one of those ones that kind of takes up the whole day. It's a really good one to do when you're stuck inside and you've got loads, you've got a full day. I've been doing this, I've been going to my laptop to do some more work for school, I've been answering emails and I've been coming back and forward. Now it's time to do it. That's why it's kind of a perfect thing to do on a day like today. So, next thing, we're going to put it in the oven for, it depends how hot your oven is. If you want quite a hot oven, I'd probably say 200 degrees. And these pizzas will take probably 6 or 7 minutes, just depending on where you put it in the oven. I suggest you definitely need adults help you do this, and then halfway through, you might have seen them do in the restaurant, they put them in there and they twist them around so they're evenly cooked. You don't want one half cooked and the other half kind of raw. If you see on a pizza, it's not perfect looking. It's never going to be a perfect pizza like you get in a restaurant, but that's what it's all about, isn't it? Oh, I cannot wait to see this at the end. There we go. Look at that. Beautiful. Golden brown mozzarella. Lovely chorizo. And those crusts, and you see how they've puffed up nicely in there. Just brown, not too brown. You don't want to overdo them. Oh, I am now going to cut some slices out and munch down. Hope you enjoyed it. Oh, look at this one. This is a really nice cheesy one with some red onion, some olive oil, and some mozzarella. Look at that crust. Oh, lovely.